And with that, I'll turn it over to Clay and have Clay introduce Andrea a little bit.
Yeah, happy to do that. It's been great to work with Andrea over this past week. We've had 2 previous meetings where we've had great participation among the vendors, talking about some profiles that have been developed that are somewhat similar to an HL7 implementation guide, maybe a little bit more detailed, which is actually quite nice. So Andrea is a consultant who's been associated with IHE. On Monday, she provided an overview of a profile that at a very high level, just to describe, kind of describe the some new tools that are tailored to version 3.5 of NEMSIS, moving data from an ePCR into a hospital system. And the profile included both information related to doing that with a CDA and also with FHIR tools. So that was incredibly well attended. And on Tuesday, Andrea presented a second profile that talked about the movement of data from a hospital system and including the data that's collected during an interfacility transport between one hospital to another. So another very important process in EMS, and thus a different profile for that kind of a use case. And that was also very interesting, looking at how you would bring together both the hospital data plus the EMS data into that format. And again, it was available for both a CDA and FHIR. Today is the last of those 3 discussions. There's one more profile that Andrea has prepared. This is a profile that talks about the movement of outcome data related to patient care back into the EMS record or back available to EMS. And so this is also a very important topic for NEMSIS. I'll just highlight that I want to make sure that Andrea talks about this idea of adding to this profile what's called a volume 4 that could potentially be a very specific template that could be used by NEMSIS compliant systems to move what we call the e-outcomes elements from a hospital record back into an EMS record. And of course, for 3.5, that's been trimmed down quite a bit to include only kind of national elements. But I think the idea here with Andrea is the Office of EMS would like to consult with her to develop a template that captures those national elements and perhaps a set of state or local elements that also were commonly passed by systems that are currently trying to accomplish this type of a task, right? So I think that template will be incredibly valuable. And Andrea, I'll turn it over to you, and you can share your screen, and would love to walk through this profile.
All right, hello, everyone. To everyone who's coming back to the discussions, hello again, and everyone who's new, hello, I'm Andrea Forquette, and I am gonna share my screen to show you what we have for the core profile, and I'll give you the link to this Google Docs. This is kind of what I'm doing here is I've taken a local copy of the document into my computer so that we can start working on it. I believe you have, with that link, you have commenting capabilities, so you can come into this Google Docs that is in my possession to make any comments that you are interested in, pointing out any problems, good things, bad things, whatever you'd like to comment on it. So, and I encourage you to look at the whole profile, and I'll give you a quick overview of what it is. So this profile is just in FHIR. I know the previous 2 were in CDA and FHIR, but we felt that this was going to be a little bit more tailored down to a FHIR transaction, just because it was going to be for the scoping of that project for this as well. This is going to be using the measure report and composition resources. So these are all the FHIR resources that we would be using in this profile. And we have our list of open issues here. Our main open issues, I believe, of concern are the fire locations that we kind of put together for this, and they will change, I believe, based off of what we determine when we finalize some of the mapping for some of these things in the paramedicine care summary, because this profile kind of is inheriting some baseline information that comes from the PCS, and it is, I believe, recommended that we have the PCS implemented first before this one. It is recommended, doesn't have to, but it would be recommended if you want to utilize the profile to the full capability. So these are so that was the main one, and this is another one to keep an eye on, is the idea of this is a patient level quality data set, and the aggregate reporting is not something that we include here in this profile, and to be aware of that as well. So for this one, we have a few actors over here which specify the system actors. So the actors here are more generalized than like a business actor. So basically it's saying whoever is generating the data for the quality measures after they receive a query. This is whoever is retrieving this data, and this is whoever is sending the data, because we have two transactions in this profile. We have a query and we have a send. So that it gives the opportunity for say a hospital to utilize this information and send it to a registry, or send it directly to, say, an HIE, or directly to the company if they have a one-to-one direction with whatever company that is providing patients. We have that open for that connection, and then we also have a query, so that if you are a company, you can either query an HIE or query the hospital system for the patients, and that query can, well, there's no specification how often you make that query, but that is a query. You can do a multi-patient query based off of like patient IDs that you brought in. Again, this is why we're saying the PCS would be very important to implement first, because they would be receiving the patient identifiers from your EMS run report, and that would be the identifier, and you'd have that would be the identifier that you would be using to do that patient query, including in names if you have names, etc. And so this is kind of like what we have going over here. This is the kind of like workflow. We have, like I said, the two transactions, and we have responder, sender, and consumer. We made it as dynamic as possible for a variety of use cases in this case as well. So we have, we just have our actors and actors descriptions, and we don't have any options. It's just you support this profile, or you don't have like a FHIR CDA option, etc. This is discrete data import specifically, not any view as well. So that's why we have no options here as we do in the other profiles, because it's all about the specific data elements. So we can go through our overview, but we have a few use cases. Query EMS data using an HIE. And this one goes through what kind of like a story level use case for that. And that's a problem. So, and then we have the, heart attack response, and the ambulance system is able to use a query to see what the outcome for the patient's heart attack would be as well. And then we have a send EMS quality. So basically this is going over each of the use cases that I said before, where you can query for the information. The hospital can send the information to a registry as well. So we've kind of opened up this profile a little bit to include hospital capabilities of utilizing this to either send to an HIE or send it to specific registries. So, or have the information available in an HIE, so a registry can query the HIE for these data elements as well. So we kind of have that dynamic, and we have going on over here. So that's why we have this end, and we have our security considerations, and right here in our cross-profile considerations, we have that pointed out. It says the information that is imported in the PCS it is in the quality data import option should be leveraged to support the content needed in this profile as well. And that would be the volume 1, and then we have our quality measures, data descriptions, and not sure if those are updated because I think this was supposed to be removed because it was just definitions and stuff. And then we have our sample EMS measures. So we have, we retrieved different types of measures for that hospitals or EMS may be keeping an eye out for. So, you know, we have hypoglycemia, like diabetes type measures. And these are just like, these are literally, and we have like stroke as well. We have ACOs, stroke, trauma, hypoglycemia, I think pediatrics, safety, CPR. So we and STEMI, there's quite a few, and I believe we added a sample opioid measures that we were thinking of adding into it. So this was utilized from the Epidemiology Center of the Department of Health of Washington State. So we had this, we had them pull together what a sample measure that we can utilize for this profile as well. And this is relatively new. So when we go through our nemesis piece, we have to make sure that the data elements that are requested here are indeed available in the message that we have created as well. But this is the newer add-on to it. And you guys can take a look at those in more detail and provide any comments. The volume 2 here is a description.
Andrea?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Andrea, we had a question on the topic just above, so just want to make sure we got to that real quickly, if that's okay. I'll read it to you. It's from Drew, it's in the chat. Andrea, on that topic of only discrete data elements being imported, I noticed that your XLS and narrative is in row 310 or something, and I could not tell if it was a work in progress or abandoned. Can you expand on the situation with the narrative? So does that question make sense, Andrea? I think it's just, Drew, I think you're basically just asking about whether or not the narrative is included in this profile. Is that correct, Drew? Sorry, Andrea, I can't hear you. Can
I'm talking on mute. I apologize for that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Always happens to me. Okay, so I believe in my understanding, this question is asking because there are certain elements that are identified as narrative text in it instead of like a coded data elements as well, and that is correct. but I believe the way that we have these data elements set up is that the data element itself can exist in a text format. But if you're sending it via FHIR transaction, it will live in a structured definition as a text, and it will be imported as text as well. But it's the way that we look at it when we say discrete data import is that we are required that you take in whatever the data is, narrative or text, at the element level, which means that if you say I only want, say in a previous profile where it says you have a section level import, and saying give me the section for medications or view, and just say I just want to view this document in PDF form. We're just trying to make it sure that the information is digestible when it comes in, and that if you bring it to a test and someone does not provide you any text any text or something where you just don't have it, and I don't think we have anything absolutely required here, but they're required if knowns. If you don't get it at the element level, then you're not like following what this standard is asking for. But I do believe the elements that we do define here, there are a few of them that are in narrative text, and I hope I am answering your question.
Yeah, I think Drew was trying to rejoin the meeting. He was having some difficulty communicating with his computer. Drew, if you have any other questions, feel free just to chime in.
And of course, anyone who has questions can ask them at any time. I just the bar above is kind of like a little bit invisible, so it might be a little bit more difficult to see when a comment comes in. So, and I also don't mind if you interrupt at any point. Questions are encouraged. So what I was saying here is that coming back into the volume 2, sorry if I'm making you guys dizzy, just a lot of tables. In the volume 2, this is where we define the transactions that we are creating for this profile. The transaction definitions, scoping, definitions of the actors, the standards that we were using to inform us on these transactions, and we'll probably use during the transactions. Oops, sorry. And so we have our query, and we have our trigger events for our query, and we have our message semantics for that query as well. And then it says the following table should be used to, the query results as well. So we have things like encounter periods and resources and hospitalizations, encounter type, etc. And we have our expected actions from this as well, and protocol requirements. We didn't see any protocol requirements when we were developing the profile, so this is kind of what we have there. But if we have any additions to it on your expectations, please help me comment. And of course, because this is open, this is something that we can work on. And then we have our security considerations, and then we go into the other transaction. And I apologize for the dogs. And then it goes to the same pattern with the send EMS quality data transaction. We have our semantics, expected actions, protocols, and security considerations. And that's what is in the volume 2 for this profile. And we have registry of OIDs are located here. And I believe those OIDs have to do with the actors as well. And going into the volume 3, this is where the majority of the other content comes from. We're using code systems like ArcStorm, SNOMED, LOINC, Nemesis, etc. I don't think we have a code system OID for Nemesis at this point, but if anyone knows of it, please let me know and we'll add it here. So what we have just a bunch of this, since we're not doing any CDA, we're just not applicable over here. We have our value sets, concept domains, and our FHIR resource bundle content. And so this is the composition, et cetera. We had preliminary structure definitions for this profile up here on the wiki, but they're not structured in any IG at this point in time because IHE is still going through, excuse me, IHE was still going through the process of figuring out how we were going to publish our FHIR IGs, and that has been resolved as of a few months ago. So when we update this officially, we will create that official FHIR IG and put it up on with an IG builder, et cetera. So we have here in our table are the resources that we are using for this. And one of the aspects is that if we looked back to our measures from in the tables, we kind of were informed by that. So things here will include both the EMS data elements and the hospital data elements. And as you can see, they are required if known elements as well with our constraints here. And this table will have to be re-reviewed to make sure that the opioid sample data is also has the data elements that exist here. I have to do an analysis on that as well. But I believe these were updated to NEMSIS 3.5, and so this is where it is, and the FHIR resource locations will probably change. Some, not all of them, but some of them, like vital signs, etc., will most likely change based off of what's confirmed in the PCS for structure definition links as well. So we have hospital procedures, diagnosis, outcome at discharge, etc., and we have your times here. So even if they're sending it back to you, you'll probably receive your own data, but in a way, it will help you do a patient matching for the record in and of itself, instead of just getting the patient demographics and the outcomes. You'll be able to have more matching data as well. And yeah, so you can review this. Like I said, there are some extensions happening here that may be outdated by the time we finish the PCS bit, so that we can have this a little bit more in line with what we're doing over there. And I believe this is the end of this. No, actually, so we're using the measure report content bundle for this. So this kind of talks about the measure report data elements and where they will go here. And this is kind of a generic, this is kind of like the generic, I don't want to say sleeve or envelope, because I know that's not the right terminology here, but this is kind of the this is kind of the FHIR structure definition where a lot of the things will be packed into. So it's kind of like you have your identifier, your measure report type, if there's a type, the measure that you're reporting with, your patient date, and organization group, et cetera, and the evaluated resources. And this is where the bundle of the previous structure definitions and elements will exist in this. So, and this is generally used, the measure report can be used by anything. So if someone wanted to base anything that they're doing off of what this profile is doing, but using different evaluated resources, et cetera, that is a possibility as well. But we do have our constraints here in this profile that is EMS and quality data based. And since we do not have a volume 4 right now, we are going to IHE to open this up and put in the volume 4. What volume 4 is, as you can see, is called national extensions. What we utilize volume 4 for is for any value set bindings or constraints that are US centric terminologies, we will put into volume 4. And what we would do here is we would take everything that all the Nemesis data requirements, and we would tie that even tighter to this profile. So if we're saying this element is a required if known element, right here, just to make sure we have international compliance. But it would say in our volume 4, we require you to also submit patient, say, race as well. And this is the value set you have to use for patient race. And so we have, that's what we would be doing in the volume 4. I have this document open, and I will share that with you as well for you to comment on. And this is what we call the detailed proposal for the work item that we're going through. So I'm going to have a summary of saying we're going to add a volume 4 to strengthen the compliance to Nemesis for the United States. And then I describe the problem here and what we're looking to do, which is volume 4 and including a message template for probably either the volume 3 and volume 4 or just the volume 4, depending on how we set up that message and how much support we have from any of the committee members who are more international and would also like that template to be available to them based off of what we have in the work in the volume 3. I just basically took the use case that we have going on here and brought it into, in the profile and brought it here because I don't think this work item is use case based. I feel as though this work item is mostly just tightening up the requirements and putting in additional constraints that are US centric so that it'll be better and easier and more informative for this group and additional EMS vendors and hopefully also like HIEs, et cetera, to implement this profile in a meaningful way. It says someone raised their hand. Do we have a question? Kelly Clark.
Hi, I just had a really quick question for you. You showed a field, the emergency department chief complaint.
Yes.
I had a few questions about that. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to ask here or not, but looking at that field, I'm not sure if we're considering the NMSIS 3.5 requirements. It looks like in NMSIS 3.5, they removed outcome 06, which kind of lines up with that field that you mentioned, the emergency department chief complaint. When you are building out this crosswalk and the details, are you considering NMSIS 3.5 or is this solely for the current version of NMSIS, the 3.4?
I was trying to do 3.5, but that just means that I failed to appropriately update this table. So that is going to be a part of our goals and trying to like tighten that up as well. And then also for a general consideration is that is because we are covering measure reports that hospitals also report to. It would include, EMS chief complaint and emergency room chief complaint as well. So just some awareness for that as well. So it may not be something that you are gonna consume, but it might be something that like a stroke registry or a trauma registry will want to know as well. I hope that answers your question. Okay. Or if any follow-up questions, let me know.
There's a few more fields too that are just kind of it looks like NMSIS removed. So I think what maybe be appropriate would just like leave a comment on the document to make sure we're thinking that piece through.
Yeah,
I think that that's probably where we'll go. Thank
okay,
you for
that
the
sounds
information.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, please don't hesitate to put comments in and let me know about any of those inaccuracies, of course. And we'll fix it up, and I will put together, if anybody was on any of the previous calls, I have crosswalks for the PCS, the ripped profiles for for mapping between the data element NMSIS and FHIR and CDA. So I'll do another crosswalk here between what these elements are and the FHIR elements, and make sure that it aligns to NMSIS as well in the NMSIS 3.5 specifically, and what the data requirements are for the other registries as well. So I'll put that together in the next few days and try to share it to the group as well. For anyone else, I'm trying to put together I'm putting together a folder here, the IHE EMS profiles with core ongoing work, mapping tables, and public comment documents. I think I'm gonna try to use, so everyone who's reached out to me personally via my email, and I'm gonna try to add them to this as like a participation group directly. And if you would like to also be involved in that and you haven't reached out to me personally, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and just let me know if you want me to add, because I think I have to add your emails directly to be a part of this group. So,
Yeah, Andrew, this is Clay. That was a great question, Kelly. Thank you for that. Yeah, we need to make sure that this is compliant with the 3.5, and you're right. We did pare down the e-outcome section for 3.5 to really only include national elements, except for the elements that perhaps are used to link records together. So, yeah, the other idea here is with this template that Andre has outlined here, we as an industry can determine, like, are there additional elements on top of these national elements that states are commonly requesting come back from hospital records, and we could include those here, right? So maybe one approach here is to review the NEMSQA elements, right? The performance measure elements that are gaining some traction that were based on compass measures. Maybe there's a handful of those that now you as vendors could provide back to your agencies that you couldn't do before because it included hospital elements to actually look at patient outcomes, right? So maybe we also add into this template the NMSIS elements that aren't included in the e-outcome section currently, but would be important to being able to evaluate NMSQA elements, right? Would be one example. So we need to talk more about this. And there is an external SME board that will also be talking about this as well. We'll keep folks well informed on this meeting in the V3 implementation meeting in regards to any additional elements that are considered to be included here. But yeah, this is our opportunity to kind of define a subset of elements, right? That if you as a vendor go to Cerner or to Epic, it's kind of the same set, right? So hopefully it will grease some processes that run into snags because there's different elements that different states or different HIEs are requesting, and now nobody has those elements specified, right? So there's lots of I think efficiencies that can be gained if we as an industry kind of determine, hey, as a baseline, here's what we want back into our EMS records, and so we can evaluate care. Here's the baseline. It's based on e-outcomes section of NMSIS, and it's also based on national standards for performance measures, right? And so then I think that could really help with costs and with other resources kind of associated with connecting to get this data. So I think it'll be a great opportunity.
Yeah, and even if they're not national elements, but they're state specific, these can be added in as optional elements as well in of course the volume 4, or even the main profile if it's obviously determined if it's a US centric data element, then it can definitely be added into the main body as well as optional elements that can be taken care of as well. And because we're able to open up this profile again for working, we're not limited to what goes in the volume 4, I think, even though the proposal is just for the volume 4 and the template. So to be clear, this is your opportunity to tell me about things that you would like to have changed within the whole profile, or if something is not quite looking like it'll work. Obviously, like this is the kind of feedback I'm looking for from your group, like, because I was very limited in my contact with the type of vendors when these were created. We weren't able to get as much feedback as we would have liked. So if it needs to be changed based off your feedback, we can change it.
Okay, so along those lines, has there been any feedback from the hospital side and the EHR side that's saying that they're you looking at this, wanting to support this project?
So Epic has a representative in the QORE committee, and he helped develop this profile. And so actually, I think he's a co-chair, but he did help develop this profile, and anything that Epic does assist in developing in IHE, they do plan on bringing to Connectathon testing. And Connectathon testing is where if they test in Connectathon, it means it is implemented into the product and ready for not market development, ready to be marketed in real world. So that we at least have that from Epic. We have their support. IHE USA is working on trying to engage the other hospital vendor participation as well in this development, and hopefully in Connectathon. But obviously, we're still working on reaching out to those vendors. But at least we have at least Epic there.
Okay.
They've been supporting this since the first proposal of this document.
Okay, and so the data sets that you're collecting, or the specific ones that we expect the hospital side to provide, so one of the reasons that the outcome data points were removed before were because the EHR vendors indicated that those are not real things. They don't track them. They wouldn't be able to give them to us. So like the ICU days, ventilator days were the ones that were removed. And just if that Epic representative could, we make sure that everything that we ask for, they're able to give us, or if they're able to give us, other things that, we're, eager to receive whatever we can. That piece has been, that feedback piece has always been missing from what we've been trying to do on the ePCR side.
Yeah, I will. I'll actually send out an email to him about your question here, and see what. I'll let you know what he says. And also, there is he will be there at the meeting on this Thursday. So if you're planning on attending, this is the detailed proposal meeting that this document is to be presented on Thursday, I believe at 12 o'clock Eastern time. And we're the first one on the agenda. If you want to also go there and have some questions for him there, I believe he will be there on that call.
Okay, can I ask you his name then?
Oh yes, John Stam.
John Stam, okay.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any other questions so far?
Andrea, this is Josh Legler. I'm reading through and kind of getting my head wrapped around the scenarios. I'm trying to figure out, as far as the actual data that flows, it is this all record level data? So in other words, it's data about one patient's episode of care.
I believe, yes, it is about one patient's episode. But
Okay.
I believe in the message semantics of this document, and I'm sorry, just scrolling through this. We have in the multi-patient query, I believe we have, I believe in the query section of the message semantics, it has the capabilities of a multi-patient query.
Okay.
That was what we were trying to do.
And then, but the response to that query, it would still be like the discrete data for each patient?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then as I look at the quality measures, so we have a lot of stuff that we recognize as NEMSIS data elements in Appendix A. And so I can see how, for example, for that one stroke patient that was at the hospital, then I guess EMS could ask the hospital, hey, when were they discharged? What was their diagnosis, et cetera? Or I guess a better way to put it is EMS could ask for the outcome data. The hospital then would, I guess, decide which of these data elements they support or provide all of them for that patient.
Yes, so in this profile, to be, I believe, compliant to this profile, it's in the volume 3. Sorry for the scrolling. In volume 3 here, the elements that we're saying are here. That's where our cardinality comes into place here for testing purposes, which means if they have the data, they have to send it.
Okay.
Yes, so if it's a, if you're saying what's the data on, John Smith, and they're like, what are the emergency department procedures that were done on them? They have to send you the ED procedures, So, and I believe this has to do with the use case of closing care inequality. So if you don't know who this is for, and like what you did to the basically it's just like for patient level data, it's just basically the detail of the quality metrics saying, these just to make sure that what you were doing during your run, this is the outcome for that as well. And I believe that was the intention was to get down to those that level so that metrics at that level can be done on your end, and even at the hospital end, just to have the details of what you were able to provide the patient, and then they are able to report to like a trauma registry on like the full patient story.
Okay. And then I'm trying to see how the Appendix B performance measures fit into everything here. Is that an alternative kind of message format? So let's say we were querying a hospital, and the hospital gives us that patient's length of stay and discharge date, all of that stuff. Those are data elements that are defined in FHIR, defined in NEMSIS, whereas these performance measures here are listed as samples or examples. They may or may not actually be supported by a system. Is this a separate message format option to send, where the hospital says, okay, I'm going to send, well, and then along with that, I think these are EMS performance measures. So I guess if you were querying a hospital, the hospital, or are these both?
They're a little bit of both. So
Okay.
The things that are EMS specific are like the stroke and the stroke STEMI trauma pieces. Actually, I believe the trauma piece is hospital based. So some of these are EMS based, and some of them are other like hospital-based. And I know we got one of these from the American Heart Association. And we kept them as examples because they can, these performance measures can be utilized within the format that we've provided in this profile, but we didn't want to, I guess the purpose of this was to say, these are the other types of things you can succeed with this profile outside of the EMS quality specifically reporting, so that it can, I would say, be useful for, like I said, a variety of registry submissions that are here. So it's kind of like we're saying these are examples of what you can use this format for, if that kind of makes sense. And what we did was that we went through each of these measure report pieces. So like we looked at the stroke measure and we're like, what are the data elements that are required in the stroke measure? And that overlapped pretty nicely with the data elements that we have there. The same thing with the American Heart Association one. So we kind of just did a cross-sectional analysis, and I'd have to really dig for that that spreadsheet as well. And that's another thing I can upload into the Google Docs.
So would it be up to the provider of the data to decide which of these or additional performance measures they would support, and then to somehow communicate that to data consumers?
I believe so.
Okay.
And if that needs to be specified in a better way in this profile, that we can figure that out as well.
Okay. And then my last question is, so let's say, you know, a particular data provider supported stroke-01. In this case, that's an EMS measure. So I guess it would be an EMS agency sending data to someone about stroke-01. So are they sending how they did on that one patient on that one call for stroke-01? So in other words, that's still record level?
I believe so. I believe that's what this profile has. The aggregate data aspect of this profile was out of the scope of what we were doing.
Okay, thanks.
And I believe that's open issue like 7 or 10, I believe, up here. Sorry, just scrolling. I apologize for the dogs playing with that. Yeah, it's this open issue number 7. So we have like a number of open issues up here that we would ideally try to resolve during our during the project that we're doing here, just to be like aware of it. So we have this these open issues to be aware of.
All right, great. Any more questions of Andrea?
I guess I have a question. I'm still a little unclear about these required if known elements. So to be more specific in my question on that, I would say that as part of NEMSIS compliance, we have to demonstrate that we can export every field into an XML document as led by the specification. And I'm trying to wrap my head around what information would be recorded but not reported in one of these specifications and why. Like, are other vendors collecting information and items in excess of the NEMSIS data collection elements, and those items do in fact map to FHIR or CDA, but they don't exist in the NEMSIS data collection? Is there an example of this?
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand your question a little bit more. So are you asking the data
there's no-
elements?
What I'm saying is there's no reason that we wouldn't export an element into one of these standards if we know it. So the required if known is like, if we have it, then we're reporting it. You know, we're not gonna discriminately exclude certain elements, I would think. We already export all this stuff in Nemesis. So I'm trying to wrap my head around why something would not be reported.
Okay, so this is the required if known section is utilized mainly at connectathon testing. So what it is here, it is more of making sure that things like the hospital system are compliant. So they'll be like, if we provide them test data and of a certain element, and we ask them to send over the element or reply to a query in an element in an official connectathon test. If they do not provide that element for whatever reason, they will not be able to pass this profile or say that they're compliant to this profile.
Okay, so we don't
Yeah.
actually know of an element in the EMS side that people are collecting in excess of what would be transmitted in a FHIR CH or CDA document. It's just in theory, if you have something, because I don't know a lot of vendors collecting like tons of clinical information in excess of what the Nemesis standard requires. And I just think that if they have it, they would report it.
Yeah, well, so like I said, this is mostly for compliance testing purposes, not
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So it's basically, you know, if example, if you're going to test this with an EHR vendor at Connectathon, and we give them a patient template data, and we say, now you have to send them over everything that is required, if known here. So if you have if that data element exists in the record that we just gave you, you have to send it. And you know, a monitor will come over and review what the test says. And if it says they didn't send it, even though we provided them the data, they don't pass compliance. It's basically what we're saying. So if it's basically, you know, if you're testing with a HIE and you don't send over these elements in that test, then you won't pass compliance. It's basically, that's what the purpose it is in this profile, and which is why we kind of often try to avoid optional data here, because they're like, if they don't want to send the data, then they don't have to send the data. But for compliance testing, you want to know if they can send the data.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. You know, I was just making sure that it's not a situation where we're having to create a bunch of extraneous fields that the EMS crews shouldn't almost ever have to document, as it's not part of their role in providing critical care or whatever it may be, just to create some sort of interoperability.
Yeah, and this is yeah, well, like I said, this is also this is not usually pertinent to the workflow of the EMS crews. This is
Okay.
more of like the back end, like whoever is in control of like reporting to your state or your registry. It's kind of like the back end piece of this.
Sure. And then about the security stuff, you briefly touched on that. These standards for communication between two endpoints, you know, let's say, you know, the vendor's PCR, the software vendor's PCR system and the HIE, is there an actual established communication standard? With Nemesis, we have these web service definition libraries, and they define the communication standard, and we just kind of build our software into that. Is this a little bit more loosely written, and it's just a set of standards, and then it's up to the HIEs or whoever else to finish that out and fully develop the standard? Or like, is it just a set of considerations like I see on the screen?
Kind of, yes. So how the HIE and the hospital, or the hospital and the EMS provider, et cetera, makes that connection usually is more open to like however you want to make that connection in development. But we do have things like the ATNA profile and the XUA profile that can be used as like starting points or like templates that you can use. And I believe I can ask somebody who's actually more of a security expert on what exactly the security profiles that you can use for this are.
Andre, this is
All
John.
right.
John, hi. Hello, you're lurking in the background. I'll just introduce you real quick.
This is John Murky, co-chair of the IT Infrastructure Committee in IHE. I guess I would answer the question slightly differently, though not actually different. This specification here is focused on the content requirements and how the mapping goes, where the data comes from, what are the coding requirements of the content. This is intended to be kind of Lego block-like in that the content could be communicated over many different kinds of transports. In the ITI committee, we have a set of transports ready to be used for these kinds of things. They can be called upon directly and say, thou shalt use this particular solution. And that is sometimes done. Or sometimes it's left a little bit more open because the community that would be wanting the solution wants it more open. You know, maybe as you indicate, you have a transport already available, you want to use it. Okay, well then we probably shouldn't tie this to a totally new transport. But within the IT infrastructure, we have a couple of full stack solutions. Some of them are what the nationwide health exchange backbone is based upon. So certainly this content could be communicated through the established transports that are used for the nationwide health network. Or there's also push model. There's also email, secure email models. So there's a bunch of different models that are available.
Sure. If I may be perfectly honest, and I don't speak for all vendors, but I prefer a little structure in these things where I don't have to redevelop something 5 different ways depending on who I'm submitting something to. Right. I can use the same methods and just point it somewhere else, if you will.
Yep. And that's what this is intended to do, is be focused on the content, and that content could be communicated over multiple transports.
And if because this is a great group of a variety of different types of vendors and structures, and there is an agreement that there is a very specific way that you all do these transports, and then HIE would also has a very specific transport preference. We can at least, I would say, if it's very US centric, put in the volume 4 that if you are in the US, you shall use these transports if that is something we want to do for this profile.
Just one last question on the security. Is there any sort of auditing protocol that you have for these transmissions? Like, we want to know who's making all these requests and everything, right? Transmitting data around. So if it's on our servers, it's from our servers, that's great. But, you know, I just don't know what measures you put in place to make sure it's not misused.
Yeah, Andre, you want me to answer that one?
Yes, please. I think you could describe that better than I can.
Right in the middle of the screen is this ATNA profile, audit trail and node authentication profile. In there is an audit trail specification for any security or privacy or operational kind of auditing. And within each of the transactions, we specialize that to say, okay, using the general ATNA audit method, when this transaction happens, this particular schema will be used to record who asked for it, what was their reason for asking, where were they, when was this, what did we respond with. So yes, there is a specification. It's based on this ATNA profile.
John, do you have can you put a link to that profile in the chat for everyone if they're interested in going to read it?
Sure.
Do we have any additional questions about anything that's happening here in the profile? Or what we think can be our next steps? Well, the next step here is we're going to be presenting this proposal to the QRPH committee on Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern time. And if you want to be there, and if you don't have an invite at this point, let me know and I can email me and I will forward you that invite. Everyone's welcome to participate in that call, and having your input is very, very useful to this process as well. And like I said, this is our opportunity to really go into the details of this profile with your expertise and knowledge in the field to really get all the intricacies of it right.
All right, Andrea, I know we'll be talking about this a little bit, I think, further just in discussions with the tax. So I'll reach out to you, Andrea. This is great work. We're really excited about being able to partner here. Any other questions for Andrea?
I'll say in a last statement that if you missed any of the PCS and RIPT calls and discussions, you can also email me. I can make some time to go through it with you whenever you're available, or if we feel like we need another some other sessions for it, just let me know, and of course CC Clay on it, and we can figure out some more sessions if we need it. And yeah, or if you just want to have one-to-one discussion with me or some other with John Rickey, or if I can swing it one of the QORE members, just let me know, just email me and I'll get back to you on that as well.
All right, thank you, Andrea. Julianne, I'll turn it back over to you.
I think that ends our call for today. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Our next V3 implementation call will be normal, and that will be March 24th, same time, same place. As always, we'll communicate through Google Group for those notifications. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. Have a good one.
Thank you.